you so much for being here. I think this is a really, really important moment for all of us. And it's just so telling that you all are giving up your time and attention to be here today. So I just wanted to start by thanking everyone, all of our colleagues who are here to share their wonderful information, all of our community members and nonprofits giving their perspective. Our fellow co-host, the Funder Collaborative on Oil and Gas, who really kind of helped push this forward. And of course, the Rockefeller Family Foundation for their generous contributions that made it all possible. We're here today because of the historic investments in so-called climate mitigation strategies in the IRA and the IIJA for the last few years, which I'm sure you're going to hear plenty about today if you don't know what those acronyms are already. But we're at a really unprecedented moment in history, trying to tackle the urgency of climate change, and work together under a very divided nation with, it seems like, different goals. And so I think the point of this convening is to really shed some light on the other side of the story, right? We're hearing a lot from the oil and gas industry and stakeholders who are very excited about projects for carbon capture and clean hydrogen. But there are some underrepresented voices that really need to be lifted up. And so that's the reason we're here today. I think it's really important that we bring a strong regulatory oversight framework to protect the public interest. And I know that was like maybe a bit of a mouthful, but these billions of dollars that are coming to states, coming to Houston and the high velocity hub, going to Louisiana and the projects out there, going to build out pipeline networks and new technologies. A lot of that hasn't ever been done before. And so there is no precedent on what's the best way. And so it's up to us to really bring these issues to the fore, journalists, hopefully, to generate public attention on this so that we can make sure that everything's done safely if it needs to be done at all. These are conversations that we're going to keep having, but I'm going to move on. We have a lot of really great folks today. I just want to remind everyone that we do have an online component. We have some folks in cyberspace joining us. So please, if you ask a question, speak into the microphone. We're going to have Bakia standing around. So if you want to ask a question after any of the panels, just wave your hand and she'll come to you. Second, if you're here in attendance and you are not a journalist, please sort of leave the space for questions open for journalists. We really just want to give all of the great storytellers here in the room the chance to ask their burning questions. So if you could keep that in mind, we would appreciate it. This is going to be recorded so we can see it later and maybe share it with colleagues. So with that in mind, everything is on the record. Got a lot of folks here, so be mindful of what you say. First, I just want to introduce a video. Representative Lloyd Doggett from Austin, Texas, has been an ally of ours on raising some concerns around safety of CCS projects. And they were not able to attend today due to, let's just call it shenanigans in DC in the House. But they did send a video, so we'd like to go ahead and share that.
Thanks to Commission Schiff for organizing today's conference and in continuing to educate and push for more meaningful and responsible climate and energy policies. We certainly need a shift to address the growing climate crisis with some real solutions, not just more subsidies for those with the strongest lobbies. Commission Schiff is offering some of the oversight that is so often overlooked. It seems to me that weekly, if not daily, we get more and more reports of a climate crisis that seems to be accelerating at an even more rapid pace than scientists have for years been warning us. At best, we can begin to contain and adapt to this already overheated planet before these conditions become unbearably worse. In Congress, we did make some important progress last year, but it's imperfect and it's far from enough to meet the essential goals for containing greenhouse gas emissions. This recent legislation was all carrot and no stick, nothing to restrict or penalize excessive carbon emissions, only positive incentives designed to encourage businesses and families to go green. Instead of being in any way restricted, the oil and gas industry is actually receiving a number of generous benefits from this new law. One is the billions that have been set aside for the development of clean hydrogen. It has some potential, but it includes blue hydrogen, a euphemistic way of describing hydrogen produced by fossil fuels. And of course, the other big one is the focus on carbon capture and sequestration. To give an indication of how big this investment is, the Nonpartisan Joint Committee on Tax estimates that the federal carbon capture incentives in the next decade will cost $29 billion, as compared to $23 billion for the incentives to encourage homeowners to put rooftop solar on across the country. A large portion of this may be used for enhanced oil recovery projects that actually have the effect of producing ever more fossil fuels. Sadly, within the House Republican caucus, the term climate change is about as popular as abortion or gun safety. All of this year, House Republicans have been on a crusade to detect any measure, big or small, that addresses the climate crisis or any potential executive action by the Biden administration and eliminate or terminate it. It's noteworthy that the one area that they haven't wanted to eliminate is the $29 billion for capture and sequestration. In order to secure the passage of legislation, most any legislation, the Congress deals with powerful lobbying forces as well as concern for the convenience of the federal bureaucracy. That's true whether the subject is education or healthcare or energy. And they turn often to state governments to do the enforcement and implementation. In Texas, for example, air and water quality has been delegated by EPA to TCEQ, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, known for its minimal interest in air and water quality. Similar broad delegation to TxDOT, the Texas Department of Transportation, with much greater interest in pavement than less pollution. So when presented the question of implementing carbon capture and sequestration, EPA naturally began the process of delegating its enforcement responsibilities and the oversight of comprehensive planning to the individual states. It delegated authority to North Dakota, which is in turn rushing to permit projects just as fast as possible, approving complicated permit applications in a short number of months. One permit, it only took 5 months. This need for speed can come with a high cost regarding whether sufficient attention has been devoted to groundwater and other environmental protection. In Texas, the Railroad Commission, which already had some experience with carbon capture, naturally applied to the EPA for regulatory primacy of Class 6 carbon sequestration wells. So earlier this year, I was joined by my colleague Joaquin Castro in urging EPA to reject that application and deny delegation. The Railroad Commission, as so many of you have helped expose, has a long history of rubber stamping permits, waiving its own rules, and wrist slapping those who violate them. As each carbon capture project is proposed, the permitting process must include thorough environmental review and especially environmental justice planning. Rushed and inadequate views compromise health and safety. The Railroad Commission's historic unwillingness to regulate big oil in permitting and enforcement is a glaring pattern exposed by Commission shift that the EPA needs to not overlook. This commission, a regulator long captured by those it is charged with regulating, can hardly be trusted to safely enforce carbon capture. If granted primacy, it would really be more efficient to just give all the money directly to big oil and ask them to report the results only if they feel like it. As big oil announces more new projects throughout Texas, they deploy their powerful lobbying forces to insist upon permit approval at record speed. They really want a blank check from taxpayers and they want it fast. The Railroad Commission would likely offer quick acquiescence instead of thorough, comprehensive review and oversight of those matters that are so vital to our health and safety. Nothing in the history of the Commission indicates that its implementation will show any particular sensitivity to environmental justice principles. In its application, the Commission assumes oil and gas companies regularly act in good faith toward Texans. Without a healthy skepticism of these industry claims and a real commitment to environmental justice, the Commission's poised to allow projects that will leak carbon into the soil and water supply, particularly in marginalized communities. Without strict national standards, communities that have already borne the brunt of the climate crisis will again bear the brunt of these experimental technologies. And without high standards and enforcement, some carbon projects may well become costly boondoggles that don't protect the planet and only waste taxpayer resources. As Congress rushes to invest in carbon capture and sequestration, I've led my colleagues in pushing for clean energy technology that also protects taxpayer investments and promotes health and safety. In a flurry of industry marketing and lobbying, we must continue seeking the facts from objective sources about this new technology, sources like the National Academies of Science, to evaluate this technology versus low emissions technologies. To secure our planet from the destructive effects of the climate crisis, we just need less fossil fuels and less fossilized thinking. Delegating responsibility to the Railroad Commission is unlikely to contribute to either. I look forward to continuing to work with you. I thank you for your efforts to reduce emissions to meet this existential threat that the climate crisis poses to all life on Earth. We can never give up or give in on this important cause.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate the Congressman's leadership on this. As a native Houstonian and with family in Louisiana, or myself, the Gulf Coast is, as I said, sort of on the front line of this energy transition. We've always been there with fossil energy, and we're moving forward with carbon capture. This Class 6 process is a really scary prospect for all of us, given that our state agencies are so captive to the industries which they oversee, and the rampant environmental injustices throughout our states has brought so much pain to so many.